So, I actually want to talk about why some people don't believe in scientific research. It's something that we have all been thinking about. Many people have been thinking about for the past couple of years with the current events that are happening. It is now 2021. And there's been a lot of really interesting events that have happened to sort of make us ponder, why is it that people are not paying attention or disbelieving scientific research? So if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Masak. I'm an Associate Professor of Innovation Strategy and Entrepreneurship. And I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people who help me out that I want to pay the favor for to help you out. So one of the main sort of fields that I study is actually decision making, because that's a really important thing in organizations. And I do sort of look at these topics of how ideas spread within populations and within people. And I've been pondering this for a long time. And what I can come up with, obviously there is these sort of reasons that are well known, right? So in terms of why people are actually disbelieving in scientific research is because of political and religious reasons. And those are really pretty obvious. I think that there are sort of these moments where a group of people or, a subset of people sort of band together and they have coherent beliefs about something. And that makes a lot of sense to me. But I think a more fundamental reason has to do with actually how we make decisions in this world. And it makes a little bit of this explains a lot to me. So we make decisions in this world, or we do actions in this world in a world of truth. So we think of the world as fact or fiction. We think of the world as science versus not science. We think of the world as this is the truth or not truth. And in fact, when you actually Google that and you look up all of the things that come up when you're looking, why do people actually believe or disbelieve in science is because, or it'll come up as truth. Why don't people believe in truth? All these kind of things. And I don't think that's the way that science actually operates, first of all. And I don't think that is, I don't think that is what it is intended with the sort of scientific operations, right? So science really works in terms of probability. And that's a hard thing to think about, because the way that we actually operate as human beings, we need to have a truth. We need to have something where we do a go, no go, right? We need to know that this is the way the world is. This is my world, and we operate in that particular way, where we just say that this is the concrete reality and this is how we do things. And that makes sense, because you need to get things done in your world, right? We really need to operate in such a way that we need these truths to make sure that we actually move forward. Because if the world was fuzzy in actuality, what the world actually is, fuzzy, that there isn't, an exact truth. Sometimes the truths are there, but they're muddy. There's different relationships in terms of explaining these things. Then we're not going to operate. We're going to be paralyzed because of all of these probabilistic calculations that we actually have. And so to actually operate and to do things, we need to sort of simplify the world and come up with this sort of fact, fiction, truth, not truth world where we can actually make decisions and go forward with this. But so the way that science actually works is that it's all probability. So what does that mean? And in fact, it's not really doing a good it's hard to get an insight for me personally about something based on scientific research, because it doesn't operate like that. The way that it operates is it looks at a sample of individuals that might be representative of you. But that sample of individuals is not representative of you. There's always some reason why it's different, because that's the way that we sort of do it. We group together 100 people or 1,000 people, and then we sort of poll, or we come up with some scientific insight based on those 1,000 different people. And those 1,000 different people, they don't fit you very well. They never do. That's not the way that it was ever intended, was to be representative of the individual person itself. What it's representative of is the group of people, and it's explaining a small fraction of why something happens in that group of people. So even though that we've got these hard facts, like our body temperature is 98.9 degrees Fahrenheit, which seems like a hard fact, it's not. Our body temperature is different. Every person's body temperature is different every day. It's different from person to person. It's different depending on which climate you're in. All of these kind of things. It's always different. It's always changing. It's always unique for every sort of situation. And it's hard to come up with a decision based on that. So we create these hard truths. We create facts. And then we teach people in primary grades in high school that there's such thing as a fact versus fiction. And yes, that there is more truth than other things. And I think that's where science operates, is that there's more truths or better truths than there is the alternative, but we never know we never know whether it's actually true or not true. We can't say that. What we can say is we have a strong feeling that this other thing is not true. It is that it is really, really concretely very difficult to get to the point where this thing is not true. And I know it's a hard logic to think about, and I think that's one of the problems with science, is figuring out how to actually think about these things, and we struggle with that. And then it's a struggle to communicate this, because what ends up happening is, yes, we find out that, say, wearing masks, for example, are 50% effective. I don't know what the number is. Let's say it's 50% effective in a population of 1,000 people. Well, what we're neglecting is people wear those masks differently. The masks are different. The design of them are different. People have different faces, all these kind of things. So for an individual person, for you personally, it might be only 10% effective. But for somebody else, it might be 90% effective. And we can't make those definitive rules going forward. So somebody might wear a mask and they might still get COVID because they're improperly wearing it or something along those lines, and then they tell other people that I wore a mask and I still got COVID. So there's all of these sort of fuzziness that happens in this world, and it's hard to communicate what this fuzziness means and the non-definitiveness that in this world that there is. And there's one other complication to science. I think it's very important, or scientific reasoning, is that it changes all the time. So when we had a best practice before based on the sort of fuzzy truth and how things actually operate, for example, that we should wear a mask or not wear a mask because we're going to deplete the resources of mass in a country, that changes very quickly when things get ramped up and we have mass production, for example, or you can make your own masks, and we know that they're a little bit more effective than the world not wearing any sort of protective barriers or something like that, right? So it changes very rapidly all the time, and communicating that, it is so difficult to communicate the fact that things change, and then it becomes easy for me as a person, because the world is fuzzy and my world is different than everybody else's world, to just say, I'm not going to believe anything at all. And then at that moment, that's where you get to the point where I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do. And that's okay for me. And yes, that is true. You should have freedoms to do whatever you want to do. But at the same time, you have to sort of counteract that with what we know is slightly better of a way to think about things, and that have been rigorously vetted and rigorously looked at in all possible ways. And yes, that you could live your life and not worrying about those things, and that's maybe a really nice way to live your life. But at the same time, we do know that there's things that do impact us as an aggregate, and it's not going to impact me perfectly as an aggregate. So for example, I might smoke cigarettes and it's never going to impact me. I might be the one lucky person that has very little implications from that. But as a whole, we know that cigarettes has a pretty strong impact on reducing your lifespan, for example. So we know that there's all these sort of things that are really difficult to put your finger on as an individual person, but we have to come up with a better way to communicate that the world is not concrete to operate. And I don't know what that I don't know how to do that at that moment, because that's how we operate as human beings. We need those concrete truths to actually do something and to make a decision, because it gets too complicated then. So we have to think of better ways to get to the point of where we actually can understand the world in the sort of probabilistic expected value view of the world, which is not great because it's hard to communicate what that actually means. I get tripped up on that all the time. And it is tricky for me to think about that as well. So I can't imagine somebody else of how we're actually going to communicate this to other people. It's going to be a struggle, and we have to figure out a way to not just rely on the fact that somebody is a scientist and they know everything. That, I don't think, is a good course of action going forward, to have that sort of inherent status or legitimacy to say that they know absolutely everything. We have to figure out ways to communicate what we mean that the world is fuzzy and it's hard to get our finger on the fact that there is these sort of limitations in what we understand about the world. And we're getting better, but we can get there as we sort of use the scientific method, the scientific research process to understand the world. So with that, give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel, and have a wonderful day. Bye.